Hi everyone, my name is Jenny and welcome back to my creative space. It has been a hot minute since I have done a reading vlog, so I wanted to go ahead and start one and read one of my most anticipated releases for this year, and that is A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett, and this is the sequel to the book The Tainted Cup. I don't know if it has a specific trilogy name. I think something about Leviathan. I will put the trilogy name here for you, but that will be the main book that I read for this vlog. I did receive an e-arc from NetGalley, so I'm very thankful that I got a copy of this one. By the time I vlog this, the book will have already released, and I think I also will go to Barnes and pick myself up a physical copy. I also have A Reign of Shadows and Ending by Melissa K. Roerich. This one I have kind of started. I think I'm maybe like 10% into the book, but I definitely want to make some leeway into this one. It is quite a thick book. I'm gonna get to reading some of this, and once I get a good way into the book, I will do another checkup with you and tell you a bit about what the plot of this one is and my beginning thoughts of book 2. I am going to do my first check-in for A Drop of Corruption. I think a good place to start is what the premise of The Tainted Cup is about. So in book 1, we follow our main character Din, who is basically apprenticing for the Empire's most well-known investigator. Her name is Anna, and she's one of the most brilliant in her field. Anytime you hire her to do an investigation, she always gets the job done. And in book 1, this very well-known man in the society is killed, and he dies in a very mysterious way where they find his body in a tree just sprouts and erupts from his chest, and subsequently a few other people that are kind of tied and connected to him also die in that way. And so Anna is hired to investigate, but the thing is Anna has sensitivity to absorbing information. She gets basically overstimulated, and so she hires Din, who has this ability to remember things to the T, and he goes out and he investigates things for her, and he'll come back and report back everything he sees. So in this world, the people have these augmentations where they can basically have some sort of surgery that enhances their ability. So for example, our main character Din, he has the ability of memory. So he's had this augmentation to his mind where before he gets information, he'll smell something, and then he'll be like, okay, tell me everything you know, and he just will remember it for the rest of his life. There are other people in the world that have the ability of strength, the ability to smell things, such our other main character Anna. As far as I know, specifically in book 2, we don't really know what her abilities are, but our main character has suspicions of what they could be. But that's the basic rundown. It is a more murder mystery set up in a fantasy world. On to my update for A Drop of Corruption. I am at the beginning of chapter 10. My galley arc says that I'm around 15% into it, and I'm really enjoying my time in this world. In book 2, we're still following Anna and Din, and they are sent to a different city further from the area that they were in book 1. So Din is kind of getting acquainted to the culture in this area, but also the mystery that they are trying to solve is a locked room mystery, which I think is a very common thing in murder mystery trope. The description that Robert Jackson Bennett puts in his books, in regards to the body and what they find, oh, the detail is so grotesque. I think it is very well done because I get these visceral feelings. I think in chapter 2 is when Din is getting the report on how they found the body of this person. Wild. But it evokes a lot of feelings, which I think is very well done. I don't remember book 1 being as silly, goofy, and funny, but I think this book, 15% in, I've laughed a few times, and I don't really laugh at books. And I think with our main character, Anna specifically, she has this very brash, kind of sarcastic and dry humor to her that I think is just so funny, like in the situation where it's like, it's kind of serious because we're talking about somebody being murdered, and she just says something kind of off the cuff, and she doesn't really care what other people think of her, so she kind of just says what comes to mind. And like in the situations that she speaks, it's just so funny to me. And I'm like, I think in comparison to book one, Robert Jackson Bennett, I think just feels more familiar with the characters that he's writing, and so we are getting to see so much more of Din and Anna, and I'm really enjoying that. Very glad that this anticipated read is going well so far, but I'll let you go and update you when I have anything else to say. I'm here to do my 50% check-in for A Drop of Corruption, and I will say that all of my opinions from the first check-in still stand. I'm still having a really good time with it, and it's still genuinely very funny, and I'm really enjoying the introduction of this new character named Mallow. I think she adds a lot of zest into the story. She has the heightened ability of scent and also hearing, and so her skill set is very vital to the dynamic duo between Anna and Din. I don't think I had talked about in my first check-in in regards to the world having like they have these leviathans that are outside these like gigantic walls that the city has built in order to protect the citizens, and they're these very big bad monster creature things that definitely threaten the world because I think they eat people. I say I think because in the first book the discussion of leviathans is very vague because we are so focused on the murder mystery at hand. They seem to be like this looming threat in the background. And I think in book two, even at the 50% mark, we don't get too much of the leviathans, but there are little inklings about these scientists or this part of the government that are researching leviathans and seeing how the leviathans could potentially assist in the world that they're living in, and that adds to like a deeper mystery in the overarching world, but in some ways has implications to the murder mystery that we are investigating now. I will say that at the 50% mark there is a lot that is uncovered within the initial murder of the one government worker, and there's a lot of layers to it. So, like, if you were looking at a murder mystery board, you would have at least 15 different points on that board right now. I know from my experience of book one, Robert Jackson Bennett will definitely tie all the things together, but at this point, at the 50% mark, there are certain plot points that I'm like, am I dumb? Or are things just not adding up yet because we haven't fully immersed ourselves in the reasoning behind like these certain plot points that could be important, or is this like a red herring? I'm not sure. But I'm still having fun nonetheless. You can definitely tell Robert Jackson Bennett is having a silly goofy time with this one. There are a lot of funny sections with Anna and Din, and getting to see them, I think, more comfortable in each other's presence. In book one, they were definitely trying to solidify this synergy between the two of them. And in this book, they've had like a 5-year kind of time span from book one. So they've definitely had a lot of time to really understand each other and how they collaborate and how they work with one another. And you can definitely see that character build in the way that they treat each other now. I'm very interested to see where Robert Jackson Bennett takes this mystery and just the deeper implications on the political world at hand. One thing about this book that I completely forgot about in book one is just how horrific the imagery can be sometimes. There was a scene in like this jungle area around, I think maybe like the 35 to 40% mark. The imagery in there was wild. I was like, oh wow. Even so, the character's reaction to what they had seen is just as equally as wild. So you know? The characters are shocked and surprised. Imagine my shock and surprise. I am really enjoying this read, especially coming off of like not really being in the reading mood. So this is a great pick-me-up read despite all the horrors at hand. I think the next time I will check in with you will be when I finish and complete this book. Good evening, everyone. I have some updates for you. As you might have seen from the clips that I put previously, I went to go see J-Hope from BTS over the weekend, and it was such a fun time getting to see one of my favorite artists live, and just the atmosphere and everything of the show was so great, and I feel very rejuvenated in my spirit. I don't know, I can't remember, did I share? But like, just mentally, I haven't been all there recently. And getting to go to that concert was just such a great thing. And even better news for this reading vlog. I have finished A Drop of Corruption, and I think I'm gonna give it a 5-star. Yeah, yes. This being one of my most anticipated reads for this year, really came from just finding that I really enjoyed like murder mystery in a fantasy setting. And I had a good time with The Tainted Cup. I believe I give it a 4-star when I read that. But I think the sequel surpassed my expectations like tenfold, really. I thought it was going to be another 4-star. And I think the last time I had updated the vlog, I was at 50%, and there were definitely elements in like the 60 to 70% that got a little bit complicated and complex because we're dealing with more like scientific terminology within the world at hand. But the way Robert Jackson Bennett takes all of those layers of the mystery and ties it up at the end and delivers the conclusion to the story, I think was so well done. And also the character work in here. I really enjoyed the dynamic between Anna and Din and getting to see more of their characters in this story and getting to follow Din as he's trying to discover like who he wants to be in this society, and the addition of Mallow in the story, in this mystery, and having her dynamic add to Anna and Din, and just like how quick and witty and quippy these women were. With Din was just such a delight to read about. Coming to read a book that like is just so well crafted, so well written, so well realized is just a joyful experience, really. I highly recommend that you pick up A Drop of Corruption. Well, first, if you've not read The Tainted Cup, do read that one first, obviously. It's one of those experiences where you read it and you can just tell that the author really enjoys writing, or specifically, they really enjoy writing the story that is being told at present. And yeah, it's just like one of the best experiences to read, and you're like, yeah, Robert was really putting his all into this one, and I really appreciated the not only the mystery and how it unfolds, but also the layers of like politics in the world and how our characters are navigating this system that they are a part of in regards to like their government jobs and being investigators for the king and the kingdom and the empire at large. There's just so many interesting like elements to it that is more than just a basic like murder mystery. And yeah, I really enjoy that kind of layered reading experience. A fantastic read. I'm so glad that one of my anticipated releases for this year went so well. And again, shout out to NetGalley for giving me an e-arc and for allowing me to read this book early, even though I didn't end up reading it early. And before I shut my eyes, I'm going to start reading Reign of Shadows and Endings. And then tomorrow I'll give you a synopsis of what that book is about. Okay, so let me tell you the premise of Reign of Shadows and Endings. This book, we follow a fae named Tessa, and she lives in this world where they are being ruled by these kind of higher creatures called the Legacy. I think the Legacy are descendants of demigods, but they're not technically demigods themselves. But basically, they rule the world here, and fae are lesser beings than them, so they are kind of placed on this level of servitude to the Legacy. And in the beginning of this book, Tessa is at this ceremony that the fae have to attend, where the fae are picked to be a source to them. And what the source basically is a sort of life companion, but the Legacy use the fae as basically like a battery power system where they are able to sap the fae of their power to enhance their own. And so Tessa has been flying under the radar of the Legacy for most of her life, and she's made sure to like not make any noise, lay really low so that she could garner no attention. And once like the ceremony's over, she can go live her life and do whatever she wants, right? And so she's at this ceremony and she runs into this strange Legacy man, and she's like not thinking much of it. And once the ceremony begins, to her shock and her horror, she is picked as a source to this prince of a fae kingdom, and her whole world turns upside down because when she is chosen as his source, she's basically ripped away from the sort of found family that she's created with these other fae and the kind of academy system that they live in. Because fae are in servitude to the Legacies, they don't have kind of normal rights that the rest of like the Legacies or other mortals and creatures have. They are kind of relegated to live in these academies where Legacy are able to watch over their education and kind of prepare them to be servants of the Legacy in a way. I'm around 20% into the book, and I will say that the author does have a note in regards to this book being darker. I know that some people have talked about it being a dark romance, but the author has said in the author note that there is no like abuse, sexual abuse, between the love interest and between the two love interests. So our main character Tessa and the Legacy she is now bonded to, his name is Theon. It definitely is dark from the 20% that I've read in terms of our main character Tessa clearly having a lot of trauma, and then also the position that she's in being chosen as Theon's source. She clearly wasn't prepared for this, and it's very non-consensual. And once he picks her, they have to have like this sort of bonding thing where he, I think, basically injects his magic into her body so that she's able to like be familiar with his power. So like when the time comes when they're fully bonded, he's able to like take up her power into himself and be like basically maximized to his full strength. And the chapter after she gets injected with this is quite intense. There are so many chapters in after that period of time where I'm like, it's dark in a way that I wasn't expecting it to be. I think because, again, people were saying it's a dark romance, I was just expecting him to be so terrible. I don't think he's the best person, per se, but he's not as horrible as I thought he would be. He just seems very out of touch because he's like a prince. And things kind of just get handed to him. He doesn't understand why Tessa is fighting against him and is so upset with the fact that she's been chosen as his source because she had other plans in her life. And he's like, well, if I didn't pick you as my source, you could have had a worse fate and you could have been like sold to use your body in another way, kind of thing, because you're like a servant of the legacy. So you being with me isn't that bad because I'm not doing anything horrible to you. I'm giving you clothing and feeding you and taking care of you and all these things. And she's like, the point you're missing is the fact that I didn't agree to this. Like, you've had this plan your whole life and you decided to pull me in here, and no one ever prepared her for what it's like to be a source. In the book, there are other like kingdoms. They're like heirs have picked sources, and all of those fae have been prepared like within the last few years of what the expectation of being a source is, whereas Tessa has no clue. Like, even when they were injecting her with the power to get like the mark that the first bonding mark, she was not prepared for that. And so there are chapters where she talks about how much in pain she is because her body is like kind of rejecting the magic that was been put into her. And she like talks about like being in so much pain that even wearing clothes hurts. Like, the fact the clothes is touching her skin hurts. And there's like a scene where she's like screaming and like basically trying to rip her hair from her scalp. And I'm like, do I want to read this anymore? I don't know. I'm a little scared. I will say, in terms of my other experience with Melissa K. Rourke, Lady of Darkness, the plot of the story interested me, but I couldn't get past like the repetitive pet name between the romantic pair in that series. Whereas in this one, he kind of has a pet name for her, but I don't think at this point it's been repeated as much as the pet name in Lady of Darkness has, so I haven't fully been that irritated by it. I'm just more so concerned about the lack of communication between Tessa and Theon. Like, Tessa's obviously very stubborn and very against, like, even trying to have a amicable relationship with him, and I definitely understand why, and I empathize with her, but he isn't attempting to even have her understand why she's in this position. There's multiple times that I've read thus far where she's like, why did you even pick me? I don't want to be here. And he goes, I can't tell you. Like, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. You could definitely tell her. And it's like kind of frustrating because he has all these expectations for her and is telling her like, oh, you just have to trust me 100%, but he's not giving her any reason to trust him. But it is quite dark in the sense that she's very traumatized, and it's very obvious that she's traumatized, and it's kind of hard to read these chapters in her point of view every single time she's talking about how much in pain she is and how miserable she is. I'll continue reading, and when I have more updates, I will let you know. I have clocked out of work, and I now have some updates for you. I know that in my last update, I was talking about, like, I'm not sure how I'm feeling about it because I think at, like, the 30-ish% mark, it was feeling very miserable, to be honest. We do get Tessa and Theon's point of view, but mostly in Tessa's point of view, she's just having a really terrible time, and it was not pleasant reading about her terrible time and her just being so extremely resistant, given that I understand and am empathetic as to why she's so resistant, but it kind of, her resistance made her experience even worse, if I'm being honest. I'm at the 60% mark now, and how am I feeling about this? I will say that it's really readable. I clearly read it quite quickly up to the 60% mark. I think just that first section was a hurdle for me to get over. That section specifically, like the detail of her misery, was just a lot to get through. And what I'm thinking about the book now is that there isn't that much plot going on. It feels very much like a setup book because Theon and Tessa are kind of getting to know each other in a way. I don't think Theon is making it very easy for Tessa to get to know him, which is the frustrating part. And there is this big lack of communication that I'm seeing. And at this point that I'm reading, I don't think the lack of communication makes any sense because there isn't, in terms of like external conflict that is forcing him to keep his lips sealed. And even in his point of views, we're not really privy of like what's going on. Like at this moment, you know that Theon, his friend Luca, and his brother Axel are planning something, and they've been planning something, and that's why they have brought Tessa into the fold, but they've not told her why they brought her in and why her specifically. And they have some sort of plan to do something, but what that something is, they've not said it on page like once. I can deduce based off of vibe and energy what they're planning, but it's not said at all on page. And I don't know, even like, I know like sometimes in books where it's like, oh, we're not going to tell you about the plan, like this secret mission that they're going on, but like maybe even in internal dialogue we're privy to it. But at this point, I don't think there is a single time that the plan, what they're planning, like what's going on, has been discussed. I mean, again, I can figure out what they're planning, but it's just like, I don't know, because there is no on page discussion of where this is going, besides, I think, Theon potentially finding like a marriage match and like that sort of conflict of Tessa being like, I am bonded to him and I'm going to be his for life, but then I'm going to have to share him with someone else. She's dealing with that, and like Theon's dad is kind of a terrible person. But other than that, like there's not that much going on in the plot, and so I feel like we're dallying in potentially building the relationship, except for the fact that Theon refuses to tell Tessa anything. Like, I think the only like major thing that's gone on is that like Theon is questioning like Tessa's like honesty, like if she's been telling him the whole truth or whatever. I'm like, okay, like fair, but for you to expect her to be 100% honest with her and you lack that completely with her is frustrating to me. And I don't think that this book is necessarily terrible. Like, I think the concept of the story is very interesting. I just think that we're following such frustrating characters because we have Theon over here that is keeping his lips a little too sealed. And then we have Tessa over here who's like fighting against everything in her being to like not be with him. Again, fair, but I think there's like a level of like, maybe we need to grit our teeth and play along so we can potentially plan and undermine this man who's keeping you against your will kind of thing, versus like, I'm gonna sit here and complain and like piss him off on purpose and potentially put myself in dangerous positions just to piss him off. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I think following these two people is so frustrating that I'm like, what are we doing here? I'm very interested to see how Melissa K. Rourke ends up building this relationship with them and like how we are going to surpass this distrust and this anger and everything that's going on between them. And like, I don't know. I just need this Theon man to give her a freaking reason why he picked her. Like, you could just be like, hey, I thought you were hot. And that would have been explanation enough. Except he's not said that. He's not said that at the point that I'm at. He's just been like, I can't tell you. Sorry. Can't tell you. I'll only tell you when you finally trust me 100%. And she's like, you've not given me any reason to trust you. And he's like, what do you mean? I completely stole you away from your friends and the people you love, and I put you through this torturous thing for like a week, and you feel miserable and alone and isolated, but I'm giving you diamond necklaces and clothes and telling you what you can and cannot do and what you can and cannot eat. Why don't you trust me? And I'm like, I understand that this man isn't like, I don't know, physically abusing her, but like, Theon, get your head out of your ass. You're literally not doing anything for her. Literally nothing. And he's like, I'm not that bad of a guy. What are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. You know, I'm interested to see where Melissa K. Rourke ends up taking me. I think how the book ends will determine on whether or not I'm interested in picking up the sequel. But at this point, it's around like a 3-star. I'm not having a terrible time, but it definitely is a little long-winded for me at this point. Okay, so I'm here to do my final check-in for Reign of Shadows and Endings, and I'm not sure how to feel about this. After finishing it, I think the very last chapter that we got was very intriguing in terms of like what the wider world in this series is going to be like and like who our main character Tessa is. I think my issue here is that book 1 is definitely a setup book. There is a lot of setup, so nothing really is going on in here. There are events that are a little bit more fast paced and interesting towards like the last 15% of the book, but I feel like those last 15%, like despite that being with it being interesting, I feel like there are certain things that could have been dwelled on a little bit further. Like, this book kind of leads up to this sort of ceremony where these sources, their powers are revealed to the kingdom. The ceremony with the legacies watching like their sources go on stage and their powers being revealed was done so quickly. And I think like we were leading up to like finding out what Tessa's power was for so much of this book that for it to be like literally a couple pages and then done and over with was a little anticlimactic to me. I mean, obviously, they're going to talk more about what her power is in the second book, but it's just like, even if we didn't get a full answer in book 1, but still dwelled on that scene and like people discussing who she is and what she could be, could have been more compelling versus like so much of this book, like hundreds of pages of this book just being this back and forth between Tessa and Theon and them like lacking any sort of communication was very frustrating to read. And this could be a mild spoiler, so if you don't want to hear anything about it, you can skip on ahead. But there is this scene with Theon's best friend Luca where he's like kind of training her and she's complaining like, you don't understand what I'm going through and like how terrible it is to be with this Theon man. And he's like, you make him out to be a villain, but he's such a good guy and blah blah blah. given Luca knows Theon in a different capacity than Tessa does, right? Like they grew up together, so obviously you're able to see better parts of this man than she can. But he's like, well, he is so much better than his father because if you were with his father, you'd be sexually abused by now. And I'm sitting here like, well, I could agree sexual abuse is horrible, terrible experience. Her lacking any sense of control or agency within her own life and being bound to this man without her consent, also without any knowledge of what that even means. Like, nobody is telling her what being bonded to Theon is supposed to mean, and like what her life will look like being bonded to him. Like, nobody is educating her, and then they're getting angry and upset with her. I still think it's quite terrible. Like, yes, you know, thank God she's not being abused sexually. But you can abuse a person in more ways than just in a physical capacity. Like, there's a point where like she actually literally dissociates from herself because of how depressed she is. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I really, why are we comparing abuses? Like I don't know. I don't know. I don't think in this book I am being convinced to even attempt to like Theon. Like, yeah, he's supposed to be this kind of like enemy. It's kind of supposed to be this enemies to lover energy. But usually in enemies to lovers, there's like certain things that we get to learn about said enemy that makes him intriguing. And like, I feel like I'm lacking understanding of who Theon is. Besides him being like the prince of this kingdom, I don't feel like I know him. And that's not just because we're only reading the story through Tessa's eyes. Like, we are getting his point of view. And despite getting his point of view, I feel like I don't know who he is. And I think that is what I mean by it being a setup book. Because, like, there's just inklings and hints and, like, vague ideas that are being laid in this book. But we're not getting the answers to it. And I'm like, it could have been a novella if you were going to do that. If you were going to set up this world. But for it to be like, how many pages is this? Like 630 plus pages, and you're not going to tell me anything about anybody is quite frustrating. I will say the ending, there was like this little epilogue chapter that made me interested in what the world could look like. I think I might hold off and see what my friend who's reading this series thinks of book 2 and if I should carry on. But like, yeah, the characters here were just so frustrating. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how Melissa is going to convince me to like this man. I really don't. And I'm not going to say what like the end all like relationship energy is, but I'm the sort of relationship that I know will come about in this series. I'm unsure how I can be convinced. Unsure. And I'm also unsure of what I'm going to rate this book. I don't know what is book 2 going to look like. Are we going to dally in the same sort of frustrating non-communication between the two? Or are we going to actually get going with the plot? Unsure of it, but I will see. If I do end up picking up book 2, potentially I'll do another vlog, but that's how I feel right now. Very unsure. The good thing about this vlog is that I read A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett, and that was a 5-star read. So, we'll take a little bit of a loss with the very big win that we got in this vlog. I am going to go to the bookstore and I'm going to go buy myself a physical copy of that one because I just really loved and enjoyed that world and the discussions and thematics that were covered in that book I think was done so well, and I can't wait for the next book in that series. And hoping that I also get an e-arc of that one, because I can't wait to just open it up and see where Anna and Din go in the next book. But with that, I'm going to end this vlog. Thank you so much for coming along with me this week as I kind of sporadically pick up the camera and update you on the books that I'm reading. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you've made it this far and don't have anything else to say, maybe we can put some raindrop emojis for Reign of Shadows and Endings. But with that, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!